want to help you out with problem 4-3, and in order to do that, I want to explain a little more about the DuPont equation that you are to use to solve this problem. The DuPont equation in your book, you can see it solves for return on equity. And it says return on equity is return on assets times the equity multiplier. Now this is a little different than our standard equation for ROE. Our standard equation, anytime you see return on something, in the numerator will be net income and the denominator will be whatever the return is. So return on equity, usually we solve it by saying net income over equity. For return on assets, we solve it by saying net income over assets. Well, now they come along and with this DuPont equation that says return on equity equals return on assets times equity multiplier. And the reason that is true is because they go another layer into the return on equity and say that it equals profit margin times total asset turnover times the equity multiplier. So what they are saying is return on assets is actually equal to profit margin times total asset turnover. And return on equity is profit margin times total asset turnover times equity. Let's go one more deeper layer to see why this works. Profit margin is net income over sales. Total asset turnover is sales over total assets. And equity multiplier is total assets over common equity. And so this return on assets, net income over assets, the shortened way to say it, we can see is true because we can, if we eliminated in this profit margin times total, if we eliminated the like numerator and denominator, we are only left with net income over sales, net income over total assets, which is what we have up here. And then return on equity, if we eliminated, we have total asset denominator and numerator that we can eliminate, and we're left with net income over equity. And that is why the DuPont equation works. So it's kind of a neat little tool, because if you have some of these ratios that you need, you can solve other problems. Sorry, I'm trying to make this recording and it's kind of hard for me to do it. I don't want to start over again, so you'll have to listen to my blathering, I guess. But when I do problem 4-3 or any problem in finance, I always want right in front of me what information I do have. And they give us return on assets equal 10%, profit margin is 2%, ROE is 15%, and you're asked to solve for TATO, total asset turnover, and you're also asked to solve for the equity multiplier, what those two things are. So let's start with let's see, what do I want to start with? We'll start with we want to solve for total asset turnover, sales over total assets. Okay, so I'm gonna, considering that we know ROA is 10% and ROA equals profit margin is given, so we have one unknown. Well, that's going to be pretty easy because I can say 10% over 2% equals total asset turnover. I just moved the 2% to the other side of the equation, and so I'll divide 10% by 2%, and that'll equal total. And if we take your calculator, 10% divided by 2% equals 5. And so total asset turnover equals 5. The second thing to solve is we want to know what the equity multiplier is. And we have ROE, so I'm going to take a look now. ROE equals ROA times the equity multiplier. Well, it can't get too much easier. It looks tough, you know, when you look at the problem, because unless you're thinking about the DuPont equation, I don't think you'd be able to solve it. But ROE equals ROA times the equity multiplier. We're given ROE of 15%. We're given ROA of 10%, and we can solve for X. And so if I say 15% divided by 10%, I get my equity multiplier of 1.5. 15% divided by 10% equals 1.5. And so that's it for that problem. So I hope that kind of gives you a way to think about how to solve for some of these problems.